that you would like to add, please feel free just to interject, because I think one of the important parts of these chats is to encourage each other. And burnout is something that we all deal with. I do have a lot of friends who have overcome it, but we're very close to stopping homeschooling because of burnout. So I feel this is an important topic. And Jeanette and I have done a lot of mentoring through Homeschool Inspire, and burnout is one of the most common topics that we get. So especially in your first 2 years. So I'm looking around, a lot of you actually have been homeschooling for more than 2 years, and it still applies. But I'm hoping that you'll be able to take at least one thing from this chat that will encourage you. And I'm going to start by going over the invitation I sent out. I gave some symptoms for homeschool burnout. And a lot of us think of them as things like being tired or frustrated, those kinds of ideas. But one I listed on there, which I think is very important, especially for you moms that I'm looking at who have it all together, is that sometimes we get an irrational sense of urgency. And if you find yourself on this treadmill, I want this to flag for you and realize you're aiming for burnout. If you get to this point, stop and think, what do I need to do? And that is one of those early warning signs that I've discovered. So consider that. But of course, if you have symptoms like exhaustion, frustration on the part of students or the teacher, so both, okay, sometimes you'll see a pattern developing, feelings of isolation. And this does happen even for those of us who are going crazy driving people places. Sometimes we feel isolated. Inadequate sleep, which we do to ourselves because we think we have to get so much done. And this is another important one, but sometimes focusing on the negatives is a symptom that we're headed for burnout. So if you find yourself kind of with this recording in your head of the negatives, stop yourself. And we're going to talk about looking at the positives as we go. Another symptom that I think y'all need to take notice of is if there's not enough time in the day for the teacher or the students to have a break or express their personal side. And a lot of times we're being really efficient and we're getting a lot done. But if you don't have that built into the day, you could be headed for burnout. So consider that. The other problem, of course, is comparisonitis. And we all deal with that all the time. You have to coach yourself down from the ledge on that one. And sometimes we are overwhelmed by family situations that are truly overwhelming. It could be that someone is sick or there's work demands either that we have or our husbands have. So when you have these special situations, you need to give yourself a lot of freedom, a lot of grace to adjust. And we're going to talk about that more. But another one is sometimes we have students with special needs. And I just heard from a friend of Homeschool Inspire named Ann Bailey Lipset, and she's gotten a grant to help with students who have learning differences. So she wanted me to share this with you all. If anyone would like to contact her, I'm going to send her information after this talk, but her grant is going to pay for the special interaction with the students or with the parents if there's something you want to ask about. So she is a specialist in this area. So that's really exciting. But I do know for some of the parents I've talked to, having students with learning differences sometimes adds to the feeling of burnout. There may be just a lot of extra appointments or just a lot of extra things you have to do. So, so those are some of the considerations I wanted to kind of begin with. But I have an easy mnemonic for you to remember this content, and it is she sags, ? She sags. All right, so SAGS, and S stands for simplify routine. And I'm going to give you some ideas to help with burnout. Some of them are not going to work for you, so only take the ones that actually will help. But this is one area where I often talk to homeschool moms and they pretty much say, well, Joyce, that won't work for me. Because you see, we have Latin from 8 to 9 and then Greek from 10 to 11. And then we have our piano teacher come and they tell me all the reasons simplifying will not work. But sometimes you have to simplify. So if you're in the situation where you need to, one way to do it is to anchor your day with meals. That's just an easy way to start. And you could also add an anchor of when you wake up, when you go to bed, nap time for toddlers, etc. But if you just start with a very simple rhythm that you have for your day, and then think of the activities in kind of blocks of time. So it might be that you have breakfast, and then there's a time that mom and the students have time together. And that's just a chunk of time. And you might want to say, oh, it's about 30 minutes, but you don't have to be extremely scheduled. You just do the next thing. So for some people, that helps to anchor their day and then just put in kind of blocks of what they want to do. But another idea, which doesn't work for everybody, but worked for me, is to do the next thing rather than have elaborate pre-planning. And I do admire the people who have elaborate pre-planning, but I found that it worked better for each student and for me if I was doing some teaching to simply pick up the book and turn to where we left off and do the next thing. So I didn't have a calendar with pages 23 through 24 on Thursday. Okay, I just kept doing the next thing. And it's amazing how much progress you make. You might feel like, oh, we'll never get done if we do it that way, but you actually do. So I can tell you, some of you haven't met me yet, but I have 9 kids, all have graduated, and they're all in college or beyond. But they all got there. And as a younger mom, I often felt bad, like, oh no, we're not getting everything done. And that was part of my burnout. But we did. So I just want to tell you, if you tell yourself, oh no, we're not going to get it done, you will. You'll get it done. So just remember that. But if you have an activity that is taking too long, and sooner or later we all get some situation like this where it's just kind of taking over your school, or it's booby trapping your morning even, think of it as an amount of time rather than an amount of activity. So let's say that you're going to read this edifying book to your kids. Well, the chapter is so long, it takes an extra 45 minutes. You don't have to do that. You could actually just say, we're going to read for 20 minutes. And when the 20 minutes are up, put in the bookmark and close the book. So sometimes we just get too focused on the amount of material rather than on just having a little bit every day, going on to the next thing. So if that works for you, that is an idea. And then it is important every day to plan free time for the mom and for the students. And a lot of us have really neat kids who are going all the time, but even they need some time just to be themselves or to be creative. So just think about that when you're simplifying your routine. All right, make sure there's free time for everybody. And then my last thing is to prioritize everyone getting adequate sleep. And for all my students who are listening, this is for you. Get adequate sleep and regular meals and snacks. And I had several students who actually their functionality in school went down when they had not eaten for about 2 hours. So if you have students like that, think about it and give them a healthy snack and make sure they do it every day, because sometimes these students, they get so frustrated, they just kind of emotionally blow up. But if they just had that regular snack, they could handle it. So consider that in your Simplify routine. I had one son that this was so pronounced for, he had to set his watch. He had a watch with 3 timers to remind him to eat a snack every 2 hours. So if you know if you have a kid like that. All right, so that's the S for SAGs. The A is for adjust expectations. And Catherine Hamilton shared a wonderful quote from the book by Elizabeth Foss. And Rochelle, I think you shared this book with us. Is that right? But this is what Elizabeth Foss wrote. Burnout happens when we try to meet someone else's goals, when we try to conform to someone else's style, and when we try to do with our children what was intended for someone else's child. So think about that. Sometimes our expectations are not aligned either with our teaching style or our children's abilities, with their pace in life, their best time of day for working. So think about what is right for each individual child. And I'm looking around, everybody here has more than one child. So I'll just warn you, everyone is unique And the beauty of homeschooling is that we can personalize for each child. If we have a child who loves something and wants to run ahead with it, that's fine. If we have one who needs to take 3 years to learn the multiplication tables, that's fine. So we have this ability to personalize. And when we do that, we can adjust our expectations so that we're not frustrated when our children aren't all alike or aren't all on a certain schedule. So think about the uniqueness of your children, each one, and also you. And sometimes when I work with moms, I find that they are trying to teach in a way that does not match their style. And they are so frustrated and they feel under a cloud because, oh, this particular curriculum wants them to lecture for an hour to their child, and it's just so hard. So if you discover that you've got a curriculum that doesn't match you or doesn't match your child, it's okay to change how you deliver it or get a new curriculum or do something else. So just know you have permission to individualize for each child and for you. The other area where you can adjust expectations are home management. And this includes things like meals or how much laundry is done or how clean the house is. And when I do talk to people, especially the young moms, they're all just convinced they're going to be super moms and they're going to have beautiful meals, beautiful homes, and their school's going to run. And I know they're not listening to me when I say this, but it is okay to reduce expectations for home management. And after we're done, I'll share some of the tricks that we've used over the years, and I hope some of you will share your tricks. But you will realize that it's okay to have a pretty good school and have a house that's not that clean. That is okay. All
I
right.
have one thing
Yes.
to add, Joyce.
Yes.
This helped me a lot because a lot of this depends on our husbands. And what I did, I think I got this advice. I'm not going to claim this as original advice, but I used it all the time. And what I did is I asked my husband what his expectations were. Like, okay, what to you are the signs that our house is too cluttered? You know, like what triggers that for you? Like, oh, we really need to clean up the house. And, and what is in, when do you need to have dinner on the table? And I just sort of found out that my husband's expectations were not very high. I mean, I was assuming that I had to do all this stuff, but his expectations really weren't that high. It's not like he wanted us to live in a slovenly house or anything, but he really was very forgiving, very gracious, still is. And I mean, I remember one day he came home from work and I said, I just didn't get anything done. I didn't get anything done. He said, are the children alive? And I said, yeah, they're all still alive. He goes, what? You kept 4 children alive. So that's a lot. But, and I mean, he was being funny, of course, but his expectations weren't what I thought they were. And I think a lot of times, when you're doing something because it's important to you, it may not really be that important to your husband and you could drop it. So, I mean, I think it's important to meet husband's expectations. I mean, if they're unreasonable, that's another talk you're going to have. But I mean, for my husband, I knew that I wanted to keep him happy and, feeling like the home was still his home. And so just communication with him over what his expectations were very, very helpful for me.
That is wonderful. And that is really the core of expectations. A lot of times we make them up ourselves, and the only person who cares is us. So remember that. Just think about it as we're going through all these ideas. Another idea that really worked for us was to develop a delegating lifestyle. And so for all the students who are listening, your mom heard it from me. But this is a very good idea to develop ways to delegate the responsibilities of the home to everyone in the family. And it actually makes the kids stronger because they know how to do so many things. By the time they graduate from high school, they can cook a meal or clean a bathroom or whatever. So a delegating lifestyle helps in the long run. But what I'd like to caution is make sure that you're doing it in a way that doesn't burden the mom. Sometimes I've seen like chore checklists where everybody has a rotation of chores and they change every day and everyone's totally confused anyway. And so the mom, all she does all day is say, remember, you're supposed to sweep the floor, and oh, remember, you're supposed to wash the dishes. So you want a delegating lifestyle that's part of the rhythm of your day, that your students know what they're supposed to do. So for example, at our house, everyone had one chore after breakfast, but it was the same chore for a year. They knew exactly what it was. I didn't have to remind them to do it because they knew what it was. And then on Saturdays, we all cleaned the house together, and they had the exact same chore on Saturdays for a year. And then when they were so good at cleaning toilets, they got promoted to vacuuming or whatever it was for the next year. But anyway, if you can develop a delegating lifestyle that's part of the rhythm, it decreases burnout for the mom. So just think about that. And our last S, I'll just give you a preview, is strategize. So some of these may be things like Jeanette was saying, that you want to actually talk to your husband and think, where can we strategize on these? All right. So adjusting expectations. The other thing is to weed out overbooked schedules. And a lot of us are barely hanging on, and we are like, well, it's more important that my child gets art lessons, so I'm going to hang on. And that's fine. But if you step back and in the strategy phase, you think, we really are overbooked. Is there a way we could simplify? Just consider if there's a way. We often had kids do activities together, so there was less driving. So some activities lend themselves to that. But just think about overbooked schedules. And they could be out of the house, but they could also be in the house. So I talked to a young mom recently who had 3 language arts programs for her son, who was very good at language arts. But I said, that's probably overbooking him for language arts. So think about that. We have some kids who are really good at certain subjects, and we kind of say, oh yeah, let's have them do this and this and this. But if you notice that either you're getting stressed or they're getting stressed, consider whether you've kind of overbooked them. So just bring that into the equation. And then if you have extraordinary situations like illness or special needs kids or work, it's good to develop, and actually for all of us, it's good to develop an acceptance that we will have interruptions and allow for plan B whenever you have to. So I've talked to some homeschool moms who are caring for like a parent and have to drop everything and go get them. And that's okay. During those situations, kids can do some of their independent work, or they can be in a learning situation where they're helping to care for a grandparent. So don't say to yourself, oh no, we didn't get all the math pages done. You should say to yourself, we really did some important work this week. Pat yourself on the back, and don't obsess about certain schedules for material. So that's the A of SAGs. All right. The G is for gains. And here I'd like you to be mindful of gains and give positive feedback. So if possible, look at each student's work every day, and it could be just their attitude, or they're doing their chores without being asked. But think of one way to give them positive feedback. Observe something positive for them. And recognize when they're working hard. Sometimes kids get discouraged because they make a lot of mistakes on some activity they're doing. But it's important to point out to them that their hard work is what you're looking for, and they will learn this. It's okay to go back and make corrections and do it again. That's fine. But some of us have kids who are very driven, and if they're burning out, try to help them to step back and to realize you are working hard and you're doing enough. You don't have to keep pushing. So depending on the type of student, there's some students we have to say, go, go. But there's some students we have to say, relax. So be ready, yes, for each individual child. But the other area I've noticed, especially when you have young kids in your family, is when they show self-control. That's something we need to point out to them, because a lot of times it is hard. It's hard to have worked for half an hour on this awful handwriting paper, and your mom is pointing out all the places that look bad, but they use self-control and they correct the one that you want them to correct. Well, point that out, that they are developing this wonderful character trait. It's also good to focus on their character growth. And this is sometimes over a whole semester, but we often forget to do this. So when you get to the strategy phase, sit down and think about each child and think about, where have I seen growth in the last 2 months? And just really think about their areas, because sometimes it's so incremental that we don't appreciate it. But I assure you, there are ways that they have improved in their subject matter, but they've also improved in their maturity. And those are important to recognize. And then remember to say, well done to yourself. Sometimes we have the negative recording going through our head, and we need to stop and say, hey, this is great. We have a rhythm to our day, or this is great. Everybody did math on 4 days this week. And just look at those positives. And I early on talked to my husband about this and explained it is kind of discouraging because I'm always doubting whether I'm doing enough. So he took it on himself to just say, I am so proud of you all that you're doing school. Or he himself would be kind of a cheerleader, even if, things weren't up to what I wanted. He was there saying, I still think it's the best situation for our children. So if you, can get other people into this with you to encourage, I think it really helps. My oldest daughter was very good at this, and I learned from her, but we made little celebrations out of things all the time. So if someone finished a chapter in their language arts book, she'd say, we need to have cupcakes on Friday. So we would have cupcakes and just whatever else she thought of, or special plates, or, if we happened to be going out to McDonald's, it was to celebrate something. So sometimes that makes it fun, especially for your elementary school kids. But I think all kids need little celebrations. So think about those. So that's the gains. All right. So we had S for simplify routine, A for adjust expectations, G for gains. And then the last S is for strategize as a family. And here we have talked about a lot of things that you may have thought, yeah, I connect with that. That's something I want to talk to my kids about or talk to my husband about. It really helps to be honest about where the exhaustion or the frustration is coming from, or what's triggering you to kind of have this irrational, I have to get things done. Think about those and consider as a family how you can make adjustments. So one important, I think, especially with those of you who have high school students or even middle school, is to think about the student's learning style. And I always assumed my students had a certain learning style because they did fine. But when they got to high school, they started telling me where they really learned. And it was very useful. So if they find that they learn better by reading the instructions themselves and doing the math page, you can adjust that. So think about talking with the students and talking with your husband about each student's learning style, their individual pace, and their best time of day. And I've had a couple revelations over time that just really kind of recalibrated how I thought about our school or about an individual student. So if you can take that into account, you can adjust your homeschool for that. The other thing I think is important is to consider what is realistic for mom. At the beginning of the school year, we all sign up for all the things that would be so enriching for our kids. And then right before Christmas, we totally burn out. So think about what is realistic. And I hope some of our experienced moms will share as we discuss. But there may be things that take too much energy for mom. All right. That I hate to say this, but this is reality. There are some things that just require too much energy or that don't match your teaching style. And it can be a burden trying to fit someone else's teaching style. Or best time of day. I have a good friend who homeschooled all through high school, and they started at 10 in the morning. They didn't kind of start when school hours, often start. They did great. So think about those kind of realistic things for you. And what is a realistic load for your driving schedule? And someone asked me once, did I have any regrets of, things I didn't do when the kids were younger? And one I regretted is I probably should have hired some help at some point, either some housekeeping help or some driving help. Driving would probably have been more helpful for me. But as a family, you may need to think about these things. And of course, if you have a child who's 16 and about to get their driver's license, this is so fabulous. But that's another way to have that delegating lifestyle, is the 16-year-old helps drive. But anyway, think about if there are things that are just unrealistic for your family and your unique situation. So that is important. And then I recommend researching and discussing with your husband a plan for meltdowns, both yours and your children's. And I had many meltdowns. So I will just say it's good to have a realistic plan. But one story I have told some of you before, I had a meltdown. And so I said to the kids, I'm putting myself in timeout. And I went to my bedroom and locked the door and got a women's magazine and read it. And I actually sat against the door so nobody could get in. Because at that time I had like toddlers who would like bang up against the door. And then I heard this little tap at the door. And it was my husband, and he had come home early. And he said, "Dear, are you okay?" So anyway, but that was a good strategy for that day. And you may need to have some strategies for your own when you feel like you just have reached the end, or to help kids have a strategy. And probably all of us have had one child who just needed a strategy. But at our house, we would say, go to your bed and find your happy face. It's under your pillow. And sometimes they went and fell asleep, and really they were just tired. But anyway, sometimes kids just need some time out too. So you as a family can figure out what's realistic for you. And then one thing we did, which is, I don't know if it will connect with any of you, but we took Sundays off from usual work. So if my job was to cook meals before I had any kids old enough to cook meals, every other day, then on Sundays, I didn't cook meals. So my husband used to have the kids when they were, like the oldest was 8, they would all be there helping to cook the meal or cleaning the kitchen or putting the silverware away from the dishwasher on Sundays. And that was such a blessing. So if you're at that stage where you're just sort of exhausted because of the demands of young children, if you can take off a day, I think it really helps. And then, and I'm going to send you my notes also, but I like to actually speak it because sometimes it makes more sense to you if you're putting it through your own filter. But if you can, make a time when dad is available to have a fun time. So it could be, it's mom and dad fun time, and you get to talk while the kids play. Or it could be that mom gets to rest while dad plays games with the children. Or it might be that the mom says, let's get this clean so that we can play a game with dad when he gets home from work. So you kind of help your kids kind of get this idea that we're going to have some special time, but it gives you a chance to have either time to talk to your husband or time just to rest. And this is especially important for those of you with lots of little kids under 10. But I think when you have a big family or a young family, mom and dad are pretty much maxed out all the time. And so if you can strategize together just to make a way that you kind of divide and conquer a little bit, maybe dad has some time to be alone and then mom has some time to be alone, I think it helps with the burnout. So consider that. And of course, make friends and support each other in homeschooling. That is one of the best things. Many times I had hard days. I'd call my friend and I said, I lost it today. And she said, I lost it too. And then we would just talk about what was going on, and it made all the difference. So having friends that you can talk to about real life helps a lot. And then when you strategize, think of creative ways to get help. So if you come to your husband and you said, I overcommitted the kids and I realized I cannot drive on Thursdays, maybe there's a creative solution. So maybe a carpool or something, I don't know. But think of those places where you feel like you're up against a rock. And maybe when you strategize, you can think of a creative solution. So with that, I'd like to open the floor to people maybe to share some of the things that have worked for them, or just to share areas where you feel like, this is a burnout area. Does anyone have ideas? So feel free to turn on your microphones and share. And I would just be interested what you think.
think I just need more ideas.
You're driving in a car while coming to the chat. So I know you must be very busy. Yes. I'm going to share some funny ideas just to get the flow going. We cut a lot of corners, and we tried to have our house, I guess, sanitary and have healthy meals. But we cut a lot of corners because I was really trying to have time with my children be the main thing. And I didn't have fancy meals. So if you're ever, cooking and thinking, well, all my homeschool friends are probably having really fancy meals tonight, don't think that, because you have at least one friend who didn't. But the other thing we did is some little shortcuts. For example, I always started a load of laundry in the morning. And if I thought about it, I would transfer it to the dryer. And if I thought about it, I'd get it out and the kids would help me fold it. So every day there was a load going through, and that kind of helped us not to have a mountain at the end of the week. Another idea we had is in our laundry room, we just had a bin of socks, and everybody went and got their size out of the bin when they needed socks. So there was no sorting them by the many different sizes. I know some of you think this is terrible. I would never do that, but it helps if I share this, because then you can think, well, I could lower my expectations, right? Yes. We always had a place for storing library books, because our biggest problem was losing library books, and the dryer was our place. So whenever someone finished with it, it always went on the dryer, and then most of our books got back to the library. So that helped a lot. And then my husband's big advice, he always tells me to share this with people, is don't burn out in kindergarten, because we start homeschooling and we think, I have huge plans, and then we try to do too much and we burn out. So it's okay if you forget to teach them about putting a comma before and, they'll learn it in 1 second in 3rd grade. So it's okay. Just when you're starting out, especially, enjoy the time with the kids. Now, I know we have a lot of moms with teens here, so maybe you have some wisdom to share with us.
Is it okay if I say something?
Yes.
This is my first time coming to this, so I feel kind of like maybe I shouldn't say anything. But when I had young kids, and I mean little, like Emily might have been in 2nd grade or 3rd grade, so Mackenzie would have been a baby. I had a friend tell me, because Emily's not a meltdown type of person, just so you know, she's very chill, but Isaac was not. And so we would have these afternoons where I'm like, I might lose my mind. We've got to figure out how to, pull it together and make it through a whole day. I mean, I wasn't doing school with Emily all day, but I mean, just in general, life was complicated. And I had a friend tell me, either fresh air or water makes everything better. And I was like, okay. So she's like, so if it's good weather and you take your kids out and play in the hose for 10 minutes, or everybody helps wash dishes with all the suds and the whatever, or you just put somebody in the bathtub and just let them play for a little bit, it makes a world of difference. And I was like, yes. And so we started, there were times when we would do that, like, well, it's 1 PM, but look here, buddy, you're getting a bath now. Like, I don't care. And, but what I've come to realize that's true for teens.
Yes.
Like if Emily is having a super stressful afternoon of math, I'm like, maybe you should go take a hot shower. And do you know how refreshing that is? I mean, I know it sounds silly, but you don't have to, showering is not just for hygiene. It can be for just relax, or just the steam of it helps clear your head, or a good walk outside. Fresh air always makes things better too. I know a lot of people know that, but it's not just for the little kids. It's for the high schoolers and the college students too. So that's my 2 cents. So
that is wonderful. And that's so memorable. Fresh air and water. Yes.
Right. Because you know in your head, my kids should go outside and play, or we should go for a walk. Right. Look, we know this is a healthy part of anybody's routine. But when and just by the way, it says Mackenzie Day because my daughter has to do Zoom sometimes, but I'm Melody. My daughter's name is Mackenzie. I'm sorry if somebody just said thank you, but just wanted to say that. So we, now I forget what I was saying. Oh, never mind. I lost track of my thoughts because I saw her say thank you, Mackenzie. What was I saying?
Mackenzie, I just want to ask, you are the one with the teenagers, right? Because if so, I really need your advice on some things.
Well, I guess I have three. Oh gosh. But there's other people with high schoolers here too. So
Okay, everyone that's in high school, I need y'all advice on some things. So I have 5 kids. Now 3 are already adults, graduated from college, and these 2 here left at home. So I chose to homeschool because we travel a lot. And we just relocated from Philadelphia to Tennessee. And I'm having a hard time with adjusting with high school work. So go ahead.
oh, well, I'm just trying to change my name on my screen. I'm so sorry, but I can't seem to do it while I'm using my iPad. So I'm really sorry.
No, it's okay.
I don't have to be the only one to answer that, but in high school, it's hard, but we tend to do less and bigger chunks at my house. So if you're juggling 7 subjects all year long and you're traveling, that's really hard. But if you're juggling 3 in the winter and then 3 in the spring, sometimes that's easier. Does that make sense? So like if you're talking about traveling and we know we need to have 5 or 6 subjects this year that we clear for our high school credits. I know personally with Emily, we would focus on math and maybe something else. And sometimes we were also doing challenge. So this doesn't always work, but I don't know what's happening. Something's happening. Okay, sorry.
Joyce. Oh, there she is. Okay.
I don't know what just happened, but it's okay. I
This is good.
Well, all I'm saying is, so we simplified by not like, so if you're thinking you're traveling and you've got students that have to do 7, they're dealing with all these subjects all at once, it might be easier to make it smaller focuses at a time. I don't know what other people would say to that. So it's a little bit more collegiate in nature. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree with that. And when you have boys, it really helps to involve them in the planning because they need to know the reason why they're doing this. And actually, a lot of girls benefit from it too. But boys have to have a goal. And if they think, okay, I want to graduate from high school, I have to have American history. That's going to be one of your modules. And look at what your requirements are for your, like in Tennessee, a lot of people get an umbrella school. So they tell you, you have to have these 20 credits to graduate from high school.
Right.
So yes, and I'd be glad to talk to you about kind of fine tuning that. But
Okay.
anyway, if they look at it and have the big picture, like I'm working toward this, it makes it a lot more motivating. So, and
Joyce, don't you think too that like as far as the traveling and the working things out, you know,
yes,
we really stopped thinking of summer as being free of school. So a lot of times we'd be like, you know what, this subject's really hard right now. So we're going to put it on hold and finish these other 2. And in the summer, we're going to finish tackling that. And it would just be like, not terrible summer school. We still had plenty of summer to go around, but we would do a focus and maybe it was math and we would just knock the rest of it out in 3 or 4 weeks. Whereas it was painful day by day and keeping us from getting everything else done. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
yeah,
It totally makes sense. I think you and the host, when you guys speaking about this, you know, like oh gosh, I done lost my train of thought. But anyway, my husband, what I was trying to say was my husband make the kids attend school all year round. And I'm like, honey, they need a vacation or something. So I was just thinking, I think you were saying something and I was like, they need a vacation. He needs to hear this.
yeah.
Well, and I'm not saying we do full out school all summer long. I'm just saying we have a foot, like, if there's something that's complicating us getting other things done, we save it and then tackle it. But we still have a lot of summer. Like I love my summertime.
There's something important to remember vacations and time off as just avoiding burnout, like knowing you have even a week off. I think it might have been Joy Cherick. She was the one who first told me about her thing with like 6 weeks on, 1 week off.
Yes.
And I found like the midterm break to be really helpful, because usually there's a lot of stuff that has, gotten out of control, and it gives you kind of a catch up in the house. Or if I know, I can plan that dentist appointment or something for that week, when I feel like there's a little more margin. So there is, some of those seasons and breaks can be really helpful to keep you from burning out. It's, getting some rest.
Yeah.
And Amy, it looked like you were going to say something.
Oh,
Comment.
basically what she just said. We like to do 6 weeks and then 2 weeks vacation. Sometimes I'll like take a whole month off, but I'll do it when it's nice out, like in October instead of in July when it's 100 degrees. I'll kind of swap it. That works out really nicely. I was gonna say something else too, but I forgot what it was. Oh, we do, for my 9th grader, I was having trouble keeping up with the more intense education. And so, and also she's somewhat autistic. What I found out is that she's actually thriving with online school, which I didn't like at all as far as teaching goes, but she's thriving so well. So I don't know if you can do online school with your travel, Charmaine, I think. But if you can, that might help out. Did you hear that, or was I breaking up?
I kind of heard you a little bit. You was kind of choppy there.
Okay. I was saying, we like to do 6 weeks on and then take 2 weeks off. Instead of doing school when it's like 100 degrees, I'm sorry, I will do school when it's 100 degrees, but then I'll take off when the weather's lovely. So maybe not take summer break during the summer because it's so hot, but whatever works. Then I was saying my high schooler, I was having trouble keeping up with the more intense education that a high schooler needs. And I found out that she was doing very well with online school. So we switched over to Monarch for her. I don't know if you have
Yeah, and Monarch is
internet with your travel, but you might want to consider that as an option. Okay, I think that was it.
Monarch.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I'm gonna write that down.
And Charmaine, I think Joyce knows this too, but just in case, Monarch is the online version of Switched on Schoolhouse, and Alpha Omega Press is who puts that out. So that's and we've used Monarch certain years for our language arts stuff, just to help spur on our grammar and things. But so it's not teacher, they're not demanding you do a certain thing. You are in charge of the schedule. So there's nobody overseeing. It's not like signing up with K through 12. It is still your curriculum. You're still setting what things have to be done on what days. You set the calendar. If it goes awry, you reset the calendar. That's what I had to do all the time. But it's really the same as using school books. It's just in a different format on your screen.
And it gives rapid feedback. So it's kind of set up so that they read some material. And it sounds like your sons are good readers. So they read material, then they get tested on it. And then after like 4 quizzes, there's 1 test, but you get rapid feedback. So sometimes that's, Amy, I think that might be helpful for kids who are kind of like, well, did I do it right? Mom's so busy, she can't tell me if I got it. But with the rapid feedback, that's nice. So, yeah. But we've used it too, just because we had kids at different grades, it helped for certain subjects. So, yeah.
One thing I did with my children as they got older, when they were little, I always planned their schedule like we did math we did Bible first and then math when they were, not as tired. And then we went on to other subjects. But when they got older, I really let them take over their own scheduling. And if they wanted to do math first, that was fine. If they wanted to do math before they went to bed, we tried that out. But they really did, I told them what they needed to accomplish that day. Like I wrote it out in a list, and then they could arrange it any way they wanted to. And I think that helped in, and just as they got older, you just don't want your mom to have to tell you everything. So it cut down on the amount of things I had to tell them to do because they were taking responsibility for getting those things done themselves in whichever, order they wanted to do it.
That's
Okay.
good.
I was going to say something about the brevity of life, in that, like, we're just here for a short, brief moment, homeschooling our kids. In the face of all eternity, nothing so bad is happening right now. And one of my kids saying at lunch today, I always feel like somebody's watching me. And I was like, yeah, I kind of want my kids to have the impression that God is watching them, maybe not in a like, bad sense, but they're also watching each other. And I'm sometimes watching them. So I feel like when I get burned out, I'm like constantly trying to watch you be good. And that's bad, but I want them to feel like somebody benevolent is watching them, or a sister or brother is watching them. Sometimes their dad's watching them. They'll be okay. So I'm so glad you guys all showed up to support each other. This is awesome.
Yep. Wow. I'm going to send you all my handout so you can kind of see the ideas that I shared. But I hope that everybody got something that they could try. And I wondered if anyone would like to just share something that they thought they might apply, either in strategizing or, yes. And I'm going to give this to you, Jeanette. This is my daughter from Scotland calling. I'll be back.
Okay, I'll just ask if anybody has anything else to share about any one of the areas Joyce said. I mean, I remember going over to Joyce's house when we first met, and she had a bunch of little, I think she just had Luke, if I'm not mistaken. She just had given birth to Luke. And we had a lot in common. Was it Heather?
It was, yes. She is coming to the United States. Yay.
When?
May 23rd.
Oh, nice.
For 2 months.
Well, I was just saying that some of my memories of you, Joyce, I'm sorry, I hope that's okay if I share those. But I was amazed at Joyce because she had, at the time, 8 children. I think you had just given birth to Luke. And, we had a lot in common. We were both dietitians. We were both, homeschooling, and we loved books. And we just really felt a kinship right away to one another. But we were not alike in that Joyce's house was immaculate, at least downstairs was. And she was using a totally different curriculum than I was using, and that was fine. But I was just very, very impressed with how well her house ran. I think Garth was doing coupon shopping at the time. It was crazy.
Oh, yes.
Garth really got into couponing, which I thought was hilarious. That's the last thing my husband ever wanted to do. And he just trusted that I would, be frugal in my shopping, which of course I was, because that's the way I was raised. So no worries there. But anyway, Joyce really ran her house upstairs I know was different. I know that was not as neat as a pin upstairs. When I did go up there sometimes and think, okay, well, this is a regular house up here. But I was very impressed with how neat her house was. It was always welcome for visitors. And Joyce really did, she was very, very talented at starting things that all her children would be involved in. And if one child really had an interest in something, Joyce would start a club for that, and everybody ended up doing it. And so it worked really well for her family. And I was always just in awe of Joyce. I will say that.
Now, that was an example of being able to just have people come to your house. You didn't have to drive. Say, hey, Lego club at our house. And then everybody did it. Yeah. Socializing at your house. So, yes.
I
Well,
will
anyway, yeah, go ahead.
by not driving around. I just when I was listening to your simplify the routine, I was like, check, check, check. I was like, it's like I've been listening to Joyce. I didn't realize it, but that must be what I've got going in my head. So we started with a new routine in January, and it is like eat breakfast and do chores, and then an hour together, 2 hours on your list. If you didn't finish your list at lunch, guess what you get after your lunch while everyone else is playing or napping?
And it's your choice, right? You're in control of your schedule. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, a lot of times the things that are causing burnout are because we are putting it on ourselves. Like we have to make sure every child opens their book and does the next thing or whatever. So think about it. If there's things that are stressing you, there might be a way you can adjust. So that's good. Well, I will stay after for anyone who would like to just talk more, but I really appreciate y'all being here. And I hope we can keep this conversation going. So next month, Jeanette is going to host for us, and we'll send out information for March 4th.
Oh, does anybody have a suggestion as to topics? I would love to help, I'd like to address something that someone is